George Washington is one of the most iconic figures in world history, let alone American history, but people rarely talk about his early life, and that's why I really liked this movie, Young Washington. If you're a big history buff, you'll probably know a lot of the information in this movie, but if you're not a huge history buff, especially if you're not a huge history buff that focuses in on American history, you probably don't actually know a lot of this information. A lot of my friends went and saw this movie as well, and many of them don't care about history at all, aren't super interested in history, but still loved this movie. And some of them, where they like history, but they don't know a ton about it, especially the French and Indian War, they really learned a lot about this movie. And I've long felt that this deserved a movie in and of itself. The French and Indian War is extremely interesting. George Washington's life outside of the Revolution and his presidency are extremely interesting. And overall, there could just be a lot more movies of this early colonial period. Please consider hyping this video, which is down near the comments. It is a new feature that YouTube has recently released. It really helps YouTube to know to push out these videos from small channels like mine. I would really appreciate it if you do so. Overall, I would definitely recommend going and seeing this movie. It was really good. I was not expecting it to be this good. Now, Angel Studios is a smaller studio. They've done some things in the past, and most of it has been pretty good. Now, it's not going to be Lord of the Rings. It's not going to be a world-class movie. It's not going to win an Oscar, but it was a very good film, especially the fight scenes, a lot of the costuming, the acting overall, amazing. You can't go wrong with Kelsey Grammer, Ben Kingsley, Andy Serkis, or that lady who was in Red and played Washington's mother. I don't really feel like there's spoilers necessarily for this movie, since we all know George Washington survives and goes on to become president. This movie really shows his early life, a lot of his struggles, a lot of his hubris, his pride, because he's not a perfect person. A lot of times in history, we start to think of the founders as these near deific figures. We start to think of these guys as people who couldn't have made mistakes, but they did. They made a lot of mistakes, and they learned from them. He started out being ambitious. He had pride. He had guts. It shows his follies and his failures, because the founders, they were real people. They made real mistakes, and those real mistakes had real outcomes in life. Washington is one of my favorite founding fathers because he is a real person. He made plenty of mistakes. He made many mistakes, and he learned from them and he changed them. Even at the end of his life, when he frees his slaves, he's making a decision to change because he knows that that was a mistake to do. Even though he grew up in a system that did that, he knew it was wrong, and eventually he goes about fixing it. But this movie is all about early Washington's life, him as a child, him fighting in the French and Indian War, him surveying the land that is now modern day Pennsylvania. They call it the Ohio Territory for the movie. Overall, it was just really good. Consider liking and subscribing, become a channel member, and support what I do here. The cast was great. Ben Kingsley, can't go wrong. Kelsey Grammer, Fraser, the man, the myth, the legend, incredible. Andy Serkis, you can't go wrong with Gollum. Even the guy who played George Washington, which I've never seen in a movie before, he was well cast because George Washington was supposed to tower above people, and he really was quite a bit taller than everybody else in the movie. Now, there was some minor inconsistencies, some minor inaccuracies to what actually happened in history. The main one being the romance around him and Sally, another character in the movie, where they did have quite a flirtatious relationship for the time period. But that is key. For the time period, they wouldn't have been doing anything untoward. They didn't kiss in real life because there would have been chaperones. There would have been all kinds of ways to prevent that kind of thing from happening. Similarly, Sally ends up marrying a man, and in the movie, it shows him as being his enemy. However, they were actually pretty close to best friends, and they would go on throughout life and spend quite a lot of time together. One of the most important ones is that they show his friend Christopher Gist and his death. Now, this does not happen that way in real history. It doesn't happen during the battle at Fort Necessity, but it does illustrate an important point where he loses a lot of troops. Now, Christopher did save George Washington's life numerous times, but he ended up actually dying several years after due to smallpox. But I think that this really serves a purpose to show that he lost a lot of men. He had a lot of humiliation and sadness around this loss because it wasn't just a normal failure. It was a failure that resulted in the loss of lives of many of his friends. And many of the inaccuracies were actually just plot points to be able to help move the plot along a little bit better, showcasing a lot of these traits that Washington had, but without having to draw them out too long, because it was a decently long movie. It wasn't a short movie, and so they really had to move the plot along, and so I feel like most of those things can be overlooked. Something else I really liked about the movie is it showed Washington's relationship with his mother, which was a very hard but very close relationship. She was extremely tough on him, and she was an extremely tough woman, and she would be really hard on him throughout his life. She was basically never proud of him, even when he was president, even when he was general, even when he was doing all the incredible things George Washington would go on to do. She was still extremely hard on him, and it shows this in the movie. Angel Studios has always done a good job with their movies. This is not sponsored by them. However, I probably would work with them if they did any kind kind of other history movies in the future. So if you work with Angel Studios, let me know. So in conclusion, go see this movie. It was a really good movie. I really enjoyed it. I love seeing things about George Washington's life. I love basically any movie about the colonial period. And overall, I think that you would really enjoy it if you are watching this video and watching this channel. Like and subscribe, consider becoming a channel member, and help support me and these videos.